I think we're live, and I hope you can hear me. Let me just double check all this. Yes, I think everything is ready. Welcome to this little technical workshop about identity, or more specifically, agent identity on Masumi. We're going to talk about one of the core topics of Masumi today. And to do that, I'm actually going to start sharing my screen. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, now you see the behind the scenes, endless mirrors. Anyways, yes, so we're going to talk about one of the core topics of Masumi, which is identity. And identity is a very important pillar of Masumi because with identity, you really allow us to actually interact with agents safely. To explain a little bit where this whole topic is coming from, let's take a look at the Masumi website. So this is the Masumi website. It's pretty new, so if you haven't checked it out yet, please go to masumi.network and take a look. And we are really trying here to explain what Masumi is. And right, Masumi is a agent payment network. So it means that I, as a user, can interact with agents and I can pay them, but also agents can pay each other. So for example, we have this little animation in here where there's Hannah, and then Hannah is like hiring 4 sub-agents, and then each of those sub-agents are hiring more agents. Now, the problem in this case, of course, is that, first of all, they need to send money to each other, right? They need to be able to actually interact with each other. And that's what we have solved with Masumi. We've built this smart contract that allows you to send money from one agent to another. So we basically solved here payments as this first fundamental layer. Then the second part, I'm going to skip identity here, but the second part is audit trails. So really, okay, you see there's so many agents involved here. How do you even know which one of those agents might fail? Like, you know, for example, like if this agent down here would make a mistake, how would I even know that this happened? Because of that, it's very important that you have some sort of like immutable decision logging to really be able to verify each step and see if the agent is doing something malicious, maybe changing the output afterwards or something like that to pretend that they haven't done something wrong. And by just hashing the outputs and putting them on chain, we are basically ensuring that. So we've also solved this part. Then the fourth part is, okay, how do these agents actually even find each other, right? Like how is the discovering happening? And this is also solved with Masumi by creating this registry. So as you can imagine, the only thing that's really missing here is the identity part, because realistically, we have an open network here with hundreds of agents at the moment, in the future thousands of agents or even millions of agents. And then really it becomes not only about, okay, how can we pay each other, but also about which ones of those agents can I trust? Which one is just going to scam me? Which one is legit? Which one is actually from the company it says it comes from, and so on. And that's actually not such an easy problem to solve in a decentralized network. So so we thought a lot about that and how to solve it. And we've come up with a framework for it, which I'm going to present to you today. And this is really the reason for this workshop. I call it workshop, but it's mostly, I would say, a presentation. And yeah, and we are basically, we figured out a way how to create identities and connect them to those different agents. But before I go into that, let me just check that everything in this live stream is actually working as expected. Okay, I see one comment. Yes, if you have any questions or comments or ideas, please just put them in the chat. I'll try to go over it earlier. I only have one monitor to work with, so it's a little bit a lot of switching around here, but yeah, we'll just have to deal with it. Anyways, so let's get back to the topic. Maybe before I jump into the identity framework here, one thing that I want to show you is here. This is Sokusumi. And Sokusumi, you might have seen it, is basically the front end for Masumi. So this is really where users come in and users interact with agents. And what you can see here is there's a bunch of different agents from different companies. So GWI, Planet, and Hybrid AI, and EdMaker, and MacroBuild, and so on. So many different companies that have agents already on there. in addition, we have these free agentic coworkers that are all able to hire those sub-agents, basically, and interact with each other autonomously. So really, identity becomes very relevant, because how does Elena now, for example, look through all these agents and then be like, okay, this agent says it's from Planet, but is it actually from Planet? How do I verify that? And at the moment, we do this in a very like kind of centralized way. We go through all the agents ourselves, and we whitelist them, and we make sure that we check that they are all legit and have like the terms and conditions and so on. But in reality, we want to give them, this little check mark that you can see up there, if they have attached a decentralized identity to their agent. And now coming to this framework, first I'm going to show you this. This is actually the main framework here, this PDF. It is just a few pages, to be honest. It's nothing like super complex, but you can go through this later. I'm gonna put it in the video description. But this basically explains our thinking at the moment very well. I tried to bring it into a presentation, which is actually very difficult for me to put this into a presentation. It's much easier to just show you the actual code, or like show you how it actually looks like on chain. But I'm gonna try explaining it, and I'm gonna try to do the best that I can. So yeah, this is roughly the agenda. Don't have to go through that too much. But essentially, let's talk again a little bit about these questions. Why do agents even need identity? And really, it's to answer those 4 questions, right? Who's the agent? Can I trust the agent? Like, what is even the reputation of the agent, right? Is the agent compliant? So, did it actually attach like a terms and condition? Is it compliant in certain jurisdictions? In Europe, for example, you have to follow the EU AI Act. And most importantly, who's running the agent, and have they done KYC, KYB? Do I actually know that this agent belongs to a company? So am I able to go to this company and in the worst case sue them? Or is it just an agent that's online and like pretending to be something that it really isn't? Then, of course, the last part here, is the agent even qualified? So, like if the agent is saying it can do something, how do I know that it can really do this? And yeah, and the solution is basically to give every agent a DID and bind it to a wallet and issue a verifiable credential. So really making sure that every single agent out there, they don't have to have a decentralized identifier, but they can have one if they want to create more trust. And there's now many different ways how you could do that. So, like with NMaker, we've built a few different identity standards. I can show you actually one thing here, which we released for NMaker a while ago, which is it's called NMaker Identity, where you can create those, where you can basically create verified credentials using the Atala Prism standard. And then you can attach them to your NFT projects or to your regular token projects and so on. And that way you can prove your identity, which is also actually a very valid way of doing it. But with Masumi, we have chosen a slightly different approach, because we were quite impressed with the Viridian wallet that was released by the Cardano Foundation a while ago, which is basically an identity wallet which is built upon the carry standard. So it's not the typical kind of decentralized identifier architecture that you would normally see, and that is like the standard at the moment, but it's running on a slightly different standard, which is this carry standard here, which is a very interesting one. You can go through the website here, carry.one, and learn more about it. But essentially, it is a sort of, I would say, like bet from the Cardano Foundation on this standard and on the fact that this standard might become really relevant in the future. And I'm thinking here about things like, the EU passport kind of stuff and so on. But yeah, so the big advantage here is that we don't have to really worry too much about building the wallet for the identities, because we can simply, use this like Viridian wallet. You can see it, it's here in the Google Play Store, and we can basically tell our partners and the people who are building those agents, the companies that are building those agents, to simply download this wallet and then like attach their identity there, and then be able to issue credentials for the agents using that. But I'm jumping a little bit ahead. Basically, thinking about it, it's all kind of building on top of each other. If we look at this here, at the top layer, at the application layer, we have the actual agents, and we have the actual kind of discovery mechanisms for agents. So in our case, this would be Sokusumi, right? Here's where I find the agents, and here's where I can look at the verification of the agents. And ideally, the platform makes it as easy as possible for me to do that, right? I just want to hover over this and know, okay, this is actually verified, and that's all being done in a like programmatic way, and I don't have to manually go in and check it. So this is on the application layer. Then one layer below, this is the layer that we're talking about here right now, is the identity layer, right? So this is basically what we're building at the moment, the Masumi Identity Service. And the Masumi Identity Service is essentially a service where businesses and agent developers can go to, and they can issue an identity for their agents, or rather, we issue the identity for them. Because one thing that you have to understand about identity is that identity always requires some sort of attestation, right? So if I, for example, say that I went to university in Stuttgart, which I did, then I need to be able to prove this somehow. And to prove it, someone else has basically to come in and say, okay, yes, he actually went to this university. And in my case, the university would be able to give me a certificate. Typically, they give it to me in a physical form. But when we're thinking about this like kind of agent identity stuff, they would just create an attestation that I actually went there. So the identity service, essentially, actually, we don't call it identity service. We could actually call it Masumi as a service right now, because it will have a few more things than just identity. But the rough idea is that you go there, and then you sign up, and then you are able to do KYC, KYB, verify yourself and verify the company that you're working for, and basically store that in the Viridian wallet. And then you are verified by us, or what do you call it in English? Attested, yes, attested by us. And you then again have the ability to create identities for each individual agent that you are issuing. And you're also able to like revoke those identities, which is also very important. But we, as Masumi Identity Service, we can also revoke your identity. So it's really a chain, right? Because we could say, okay, every 3 years or so, you have to renew it, or I don't know, something happened, whatever. But we are basically, in this case, the attestant. And obviously, this is not the perfect scenario, that we are, only the kind of like centralized instance here. But in the long term, we will not be the only ones, because we are just using the standard, and we will be the first user of the standard. But then anyone else could come in and could run a service like this themselves, basically. And you could even have agents that have 2 attestations, right? They could have 2 different identities, and they can sign the agent with both of them, essentially. So really, you want to have redundancy, and you don't want to be reliant on just one of those services. And that's kind of how it works with like KYC providers out there as well. I mean, if you do 1 KYC, it's pretty safe. If you do 10 KYCs from different KYC providers, it's even safer. I talked a lot, and I only went to the second pillar here. Let me speed up a little bit. But yeah, essentially, so the identity service is built on Viridian, on the carrier identifiers. And then this is not technically 100% built on top of blockchain, but there's a signing component to it, because like every time you create an agent, you are basically signing now the metadata of this agent with your identity to really like connect them together. And it's not only in one direction, it's actually in 2 directions that we are doing this. Yes. So that's kind of what I already said. So you are essentially like signing here on chain by creating this metadata transaction, and we have a really nice standard here. Actually, my computer is almost empty. Let me plug it in. So so we have a really nice standard here, which I can show you, which we call it the Masumi improvement proposals. And the Masumi improvement proposals essentially define, that's the wrong one, define the different standards that we have in Masumi. So here we have this metadata standard, which is currently the metadata that would be stored on chain. We've just expanded it, so it's going to be slightly different soon. But essentially, this is the metadata standard that you would put on chain and that you would also sign with your identity that you have created in the identity standard. Yeah. And then the other way around as well. Basically, you would sign the identity with your Cardano wallet as well. So typically what this would look like here is really, it's quite simple, right? So you create an agent and you register the agent with your name, type, metadata, blah, blah, blah. And then you request the service to create a challenge which you can sign, and the service in this case being the Masumi identity service, or Masumi as a service, as we call it. And then you would sign it with your wallet, and then you would the service would confirm that the signing is actually legit. And that way you have linked it to your wallet, essentially. Now, I know a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about right now sounds a little bit theoretical, and it's really a little bit difficult to wrap your head around sometimes. So because of that, the main thing that is always kind of like shown when you're learning about this kind of stuff and about digital identities is this trust triangle. And I wanted to bring this here as well. I tried my best kind of like showcasing it. It's not perfect because this arrow here is actually pointing in the wrong direction. It should be pointing in the different, and like back to the issuer here. But in general, I think you can imagine, there's the trust triangle with the issuer, the holder, and then the verifier, basically. And if you think about it, the issuer would be really the kind of platform. So that's the Masumi as a service, or Masumi identity standard. Not the standard, the Masumi identity platform. And this is the one which actually issues the credentials and actually does the attestation that this AI agent is actually coming from a certain kind of company. Then so it issues the verifiable credential, essentially, in the traditional world. Then the agent holds this and would present it to the verifier, which in our case is Sokusumi, because Sokusumi is the platform that the users basically use. But it could also be not Sokusumi. It could also be a regular user who tries to do it manually, right? But then the platform essentially says, okay, this looks cool, but I don't trust you that this is all legit. I only trust the issuer here. So Kusumi basically goes back to the issuer and checks these claims, and basically double checks with the keys of the issuer if the issuer actually created this kind of identity. And then based on that, they make an analysis. So yes. So that's like a very core kind of basic trust triangle concept that you can look up everywhere. It's like I've probably explained it super poorly, but there's like many websites online where you can find exactly that. Now, if we go to the next step and really think about what credentials an agent actually can hold, there's a lot of different answers to this, and we came to the conclusion that it really comes down to these three here: reputation, compliance, and expertise. And reputation is actually a tricky one, because that's one where some of the stuff you can get out of out of the on-chain metadata already. Like, for example, how many tasks the agent has already done. You can just get that from on-chain. You can just take a look and you can see, okay, how many has it done, how many has it refunded, and so on. But in general, the kind of stuff that we are imagining in there, in like the long term, I would say, is, for example, ratings, and in general, also, comments on the output of the agent, stuff like that. So really reputation kind of scores. And we think that this is really what such a credential can hold. Then the second part, I think this is the really easy to understand part, because I used it as an example a few times. It's the KYC, KYB, right? You want to do that, so you are able to really say, okay, this agent actually belongs to this company or no. And then the third part is like attestations for certain expertise. So, for example, if you think about a human, there you would, for example, say, okay, this person has done the following course in university, and I can attest that they actually did the course. So because of that, they are an expert in this kind of area. For an agent, it really is similar, to be honest. Like we could go ahead and we could basically say things like, okay, we can verify that this agent actually has certain like domain knowledge about, for example, marketing coming from Service Plan. Sorry, the marketing company that we're working with. Or I can even imagine a future where there's like automated tests for agents to test them on what are they good at, and then this kind of stuff could go in there. So these are the three things that we see in such a credential, and based on that, we have created a credential schema. This is not 100% final. I think there's a few things that we might have in there and might not have in there. So the completed tasks, for example, we might throw out again, but essentially that's kind of how we plan it at the moment. Now, one thing that's also really important to understand about this standard, and this is not really a Masumi kind of concept, but it's more like a carry and a general kind of identity standard concept, is the selective disclosure part. So I mean, when identities like this were created, really it was about giving humans, or how do you say, decentralized identities like this were created. It's really about giving humans abilities to show users what they want to show, and only that, right? Like I don't need to show you when I was born. I just need to show you that I'm over 18. That's a very good example. And this is really something that we want to have as well in Masumi, and we basically have it simply by using the Viridian platform and by using the carry standard, because we think that there are certain information that should not always be public. For example, really when it comes to the KYC part. I mean, yes, I want to know that this agent was actually made by this person, but maybe no, I don't want to know all the kind of details about this person. Like what if they are using a pseudonym or something like that, right? So really, selective disclosure is one part of it. So what we are doing right now is we are building this whole thing, as I keep saying, in the Masumi identity platform, or Masumi as a service, which also has a few additional things, which will be things like just an abstraction for the Masumi payment service at the moment, which just makes it easier for developers to integrate it without knowing anything about Cardano. So what we've done is we've designed these endpoints, and these are basically the endpoints you can use then in there to create identities like that. But there will also be a very easy kind of like user interface, because we really want to make it accessible for both, developers, also agents, but also, of course, just regular users. These are just some principles. I think we can skip this. And and then here we just have a little bit of a list what this actually means for Sokosumi and Kodozumi as well. And I think here, just to give you a little bit of a rundown again, I mean, Sokosumi is very easy, right? I can just go into it and I can see, okay, is this verified or is it not verified? Or I can search for certain criteria that are verified, like the reputation score, or that it only shows me agents from a certain company, or it only shows me verified agents, stuff like that, right? But then on Kodozumi, Also, it's really interesting because in Kodozumi, which is our agent runtime environment, we could do things like kind of credential-gated task acceptance, which I think is really interesting. We could say, okay, you can only do this task if you are proving to us kind of like programmatically that you have certain kind of credentials. And this is really when you are thinking about agent-to-agent kind of interactions. So it's about kind of verifying to other agents on the fly that you can do certain things or that you have a certain background as the agent, stuff like that, right? So I mean, it's very vague, but I can see a lot of interesting use cases, and we'll just have to see kind of what we are doing and where we are ending up. Now, I'm already at the end of my presentation. I know I rushed a little bit through this, but I also think it was over 20 minutes now already. So yeah, thank you for watching. Just maybe the kind of key takeaways that I want you to have is, we are not building a custom identity system. We are building it on top of existing standards, which we think makes a lot more sense. And we are basically building a way where it's a bidirectional signing on-chain and off-chain to really be able to prove that this belongs to this specific agent, like the verified credential belongs to this agent, and there's kind of like an exchange there. And and we are using the regular issuer holder verifier model, so nothing special there. We have selective disclosure. We have defined an API first kind of approach. And this will be basically usable in both Sokozumi and Kodozumi. And of course, also in Masumi, it all belongs together in a way. So yes, thank you very much for watching. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'm going to take a look at the chat actually right now. Let me turn off the screen. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat right now. But yes, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We are very excited. I think we're going to roll this out in the next few weeks, and then everyone will be able to test it already. Okay, cool. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, everyone.